Welcome, all you future debt-free millionaires. Hey, this is Zach Edwards with another Debt-Free Millionaire podcast and personal finance course. As you've been hearing, next season of this podcast will be on real estate and how you can make millions from it. But first off, we're going to be talking about today, recessions. This is week 10, day 3. And so this is Wednesday that we're putting out this podcast. But just so you know, we are hoping to keep from going into a recession. There are possible recessions on their way. I'm not saying that there is, and I'm not saying there isn't a recession on their way, but I am saying that we're going to teach you the history of it. Now, I was able to call the last one. This one, I'm not quite sure because it could actually happen before it usually happens in history. But let's walk you through of what a recession is. And the best way of doing this is I found a great video online to help us explain this. Okay, so here we go.
What is a recession? A recession is a period of economic decline characterized by a decrease in gross domestic product, GDP, which is a measure of the total value of goods and services produced by an economy. It can also include decreases in income, employment, and trade, usually lasting for at least 2 consecutive quarters. Recessions are generally caused by a variety of factors, such as a drop in consumer demand, reduced levels of investment, or a financial crisis. What are the causes of a recession? Well, causes of a recession can vary, but typically involve a combination of factors such as a drop in consumer demand, decreased levels of investment, and a financial crisis. Recessions can be triggered by a variety of events such as natural disasters, wars, pandemics, or changes in government policies. What happens during a recession? During a recession, businesses tend to experience lower sales, which can lead to a reduction in their workforce or wages. This can, in turn, result in a rise in unemployment and a decrease in consumer spending, further depressing economic growth. Governments often respond to recessions by implementing policies such as stimulus spending, tax cuts, or regulatory reforms to help stimulate economic activity. Central banks may also lower interest rates to encourage borrowing and investment. Recessions can have significant social and political impacts, including higher rates of poverty, social unrest, and political instability. Governments may need to provide assistance to those impacted by the recession, including unemployment benefits and other forms of support. What are the best?
Okay, let's stop it there. So, as he said, recession is normally 2 quarters of negative GDP. So, I'm going to go over what GDP is in just a second. But what it can cause is unemployment, loss of revenue for businesses, which because there's a loss of revenue for businesses, they can't afford to keep you employed, and so they have to let you go. This is what happened with me. I was in the home building industry in 2008. I came into the home building industry probably, I think, about 2006. So I just got out of college. I was ready to work. Actually, it was 2005. Worked for a year. And it was 2007 that I actually lost my job. This is the start of the recession. So the recession is called the 2008 recession, but it was actually started in 2007. 2007, what happened was there was too many houses on the market and not enough buyers. And so all of a sudden, because there was a drop in demand on houses, because there's so much supply, it's a supply and demand. Demand goes up, supply usually goes down, prices go up. Now, if demand goes down because supply is up, prices go down. This is what drops the GDP. Now, let me give you one more video that helps explain what GDP is. It's right here. Listen up.
Well, gross domestic product, also called GDP in your neck of the woods, is out today. For the first quarter, the U.S. economy grew at a rate of 1.6%, falling short of the 2.5% that the street and economists expected. But let's break down what in the world GDP is in the first place. GDP is the total monetary value of all final goods and services produced in a country in a specific period of time. And this number essentially is a way to look at the health of a country's economy and growth rate. So how's it measured? Well, here's the equation. You've heard of Cigna before, right? Well, for GDP, just think Cignex. GDP equals consumption plus investment plus government spending plus net exports. C, consumption. That's how much individuals are spending on goods and services. This is the biggest component of GDP in the US. Then there's I, the investment, business investment or capital expenditures. It's businesses buying machinery, for example. And then the G, well, that's the government spending. That's how much the government spends on things like military, equipment, infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. And then we get to the NX, which is net exports, which is exports minus imports. So if a country exports more than it imports, that's a positive contribution. If a country imports more than it exports, then that's a negative to the GDP equation. So let's...
Okay, so we'll leave it there. You can watch more of that. You got the titles on there. But what's really important is to understand what, again, GDP is. GDP is how much we spend in the country on goods and services. That's the easiest breakdown of it. I'm going to show you a picture that's really important for this. Actually, that's not the picture I want to start off with. This is the picture I want to start off with. So this is the Great Depression right here, about 10 years of the Great Depression. Now, as you can see, there was a huge increase. Now, this is market volatility. This basically means that the white is a fluctuation of 1% of all businesses and the percentage of 2% increase or drop. So the volatility of the market. Now, this over here shows you the economy itself. The economy was booming before the Depression, and then it came down, started going back up, and then it came down again. The full Depression, they say, started in 1929 and went till 1941. That was 11 years. That was 12 years. 12 years of a really bad economy. And it's interesting because it shows you right here, Germany invades France. We entered the war soon afterwards. Because we entered the war, what happened? Military spending, government spending went up, and so the volatility of the market dropped. The economy started to level out and actually start to incline again because the government was spending so much money on the military. The problem is, who's sending the government money? Oh, yeah, wait a second, that's us. And as you might know, this is also where, if you go back to the tax episode, when this was happening, they skyrocketed taxes. You were paying over 50% of the money that you were making was going to the government. Over 50%. And not to the state government, it was all going to the federal government during this time. And so that was horrible. And what did that do? It stabilized us, but it really wasn't a very good idea. And a lot of that money went to those that were in entitlements. Now, again, we are working to get you out of debt, so you're not worrying about being entitled to anything. You're entitled to your money. You're entitled to be completely self-reliant. You're entitled to be prepared for the future. So you don't have to worry about the government paying you for things. So this is the market volatility. As you can see here, this is where I lost my job. 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. So that's what happened during that time. And then you can see also here, this is around the time of COVID. The volatility during COVID was extreme. There was a lot of volatility in the market going up and down. And you can see all these different places where different things happened. OPEC embargo, Iranian revolution, let's see, Chernobyl disaster, the 87 crash. There was the dot-com bubble around here, Asian financial crisis. Oh, there's the dot-com bubble right here when the recession went down. You've got the 2008 recession, 2007 to 2008, right here. The Iraq War was that long. So you can actually see where all the wars were. World War II was right here. That's basically what got us to incline because of the government spending that was going on. Korean War, government spending that was going on. Vietnam War, yeah, that was not government spending. There was government spending in there, but that did not help the economy. Let's see, Gulf War, Oklahoma City bombing. Ooh. I don't think that had anything to do with the market too much, minus a little increase, decrease. September 11th attack. So I'll put this available on the comments below, so you can actually see where this is all coming from. Okay, but the next one is very important. This is where you can see the GDP skyrocketing and then tanking. This is back in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, and so on and so forth until about now. And actually, this has come down again, which is why they're talking about GDP being lower. The last video that we watched was only 3 weeks old. So this is actually a continuous question here on what's going to happen with the economy, which is why I said this one will not be, if it's to happen in the next 5 years, it's not to be within history, because, and I'll go over that in just a second, what the history is with recessions. Let's go over one other thing. Okay, so you can see these are the GDPs. 2006, there was 1 month or 1 quarter of negative GDP. 2008, these are the negatives. So actually, and that's 2007. That's where it all started. But we were able to have 1 positive quarter of GDP, and then a whole bunch of negatives. 1 negative, not consecutive. 1 negative, not consecutive. Negative. 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. Again, this is real GDP. And then here also, 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP in Q1 and Q2 of 2022. So we did actually hit a small recession there. But there's a thing. In economies like this, we don't know if it will come back. Here you go, second quarter 2023. As you saw 3 months ago, it's actually dropped to around 1.6, which is lower than the 2.4. So let me bring this a little bit closer. This is 2022, quarter 1, negative GDP, quarter 2, negative GDP. 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. And this is usually where we could say a recession. But there's a political body inside the government that can actually say, oh, this is a recession. Oh, this is not a recession. The truth is that this is not a quote unquote recession to them, and neither was the pandemic. And I'll go over the actual types of recession in just a little bit. So another thing to look at is, now this is 2022, second quarter. It went up, it started going down a little bit, it went up a good amount to 5%, and then started coming down. Look at what's happening with inflation. This is the down part of inflation. It dropped a little bit, and now it's going back up. It's going back up. Yeah, now it's around 3.6 and higher. So this is something to look towards. Okay, and this is actually the price consumer, not index, PCE. I'm going to have to look that up. I'll get back to you on the actual abbreviation of there. But again, one more time, 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP would call for a recession. Again, this was because of the pandemic, so it wasn't actually considered a quote-unquote economic recession, because as you can see, Q3 is when some of the cities and states started to open up, the lockdown went away, and so the GDP skyrocketed as they recovered from that. This is what you would consider a V. See that right there? A V recovery. I'll go over that also in just a little bit. No, we're not going to go into that. Let's go over that right now. Okay, so first off, we've talked about recessions and what they are. So in 2008, it was the worst recession in 50 years. Now, again, too many houses to substantiate the high prices. Prices were skyrocketing. Now, there's not enough houses on the market, but the prices is still skyrocketing. Until the pricing starts coming down, the Fed, the central banks in the Federal Reserve, will not actually bring down the interest rates. So we're going to go over what's happening with California and New York, mostly California, but I'm going to go over the different types of recessions. Okay, so you can't see it, but in the book, you'll actually see what is called a boom and bust economy. A boom is basically when the economy is booming, and a bust is when it goes negative for a certain amount of time. And the reason is because it boomed so much that the prices went up too much, and it has to equalize, so it has to go down for a little bit and then come back up. That is one type of quote unquote recession, but not a bad recession, because it's just a recalculating of the prices that we have. The next one is a balance sheet recovery. So 2008 was considered this. So this is when the banks see a decline in their balance sheet due to a failing asset or bad loans. Of course, that's exactly what 2008 was. It was bad loans for houses that were on the market, but not just bad loans for that. It was bad loans for like everything, where you didn't have to put money down. You had all these different things that were going against you. And so the 2008 to 2012 recession happened because of that. What's another one? Another one is called a depression. A depression is an extended period of basically negative economies. So there was a recession when it came to, there was a depression back during the 1929 to 1941. So that is an extended amount of time. And the output falls over 10%. If we go back to the original picture, you'll see, again, it was a huge decline in the market, over 10%. And also the volatility of the market was horrible from 2029 until 2041. Sorry, 1929 until 1941. Sorry about that. Okay, now the next type of recession is a supply side shock recession. So a supply side is, think of Hurricane Katrina. So when Hurricane Katrina hit in, when was it? I was in college, so about 2002, 2003. When that happened, all of a sudden the price of oil skyrocketed, because what happened? Hurricane Katrina hit all the oil rigs in the Gulf. All of them were down. And so because of that, they weren't producing enough oil. And because of that, there was a supply side shock. So all the prices skyrocketed, but not just for oil, everything skyrocketed, because if oil goes up, plastic's made out of oil. So plastic has to go up. Everything's transported using oil. So prices have to go up. Everything that's connected to everything that we sell and manufacture is connected to oil right now. And so when the recession happened, the prices went up, which means the disposable income of people went down. People lost their jobs. People couldn't afford some of the increases in price. And they had to raise prices again because they could not afford to get it out any cheaper. Okay, now the last type is actually called demand shock recession. Demand shock recession. Now, these are not what you would consider normal recessions. These are small ones that are caused by certain acts that are outside of the economy. 9/11, when that happened, it created a demand shock recession. Very short. COVID lockdown, that created a demand shock recession. So these are all different types of recessions that happen. COVID-19 created what looked like a recession, but again, demand shock recession, which means a short period of time, which was a shock to the economy because it's something that was outside of the economy. What's happening now? Well, 2022 was not a shock. There was nothing that actually happened around that besides the economy having a bad day, a bad 2 quarters. And as you can see right here is the PCE price index. Okay, now let's talk about something that is really good, and that is recovery. I'm actually going to skip through a few of these. I told you that there was a V-shaped recovery. So when the market goes down and back up, mostly again because of a market shock recession, that would be, or sorry, I should say demand shock recession, then it's a quick up and down right there. Okay, now a W is a lot of times when the government tries to get in and tries to fix things, and it actually fixes it for a time and then it goes back down because they didn't actually fix the issue. And the issue was the economy was not going the free market economy was not booming as it was supposed to be. Because if a government pumps in money, it might bring back some, but if the economy hasn't jump-started by then, it will go back down until the actual free market brings it back up. So these are the different types of economies. So you can actually have an L shape, which usually means if this is going up here, this is finally basically when it recovers, is when it hits this point. This is okay, it tanked and you slowly bring it back, not to where it was before, but there. And they were saying that this was what they thought COVID was going to be like. But as you can see, again, go back to this. Yeah, go here. It was a very big V. Boom, it went up. Now, there was a little drop, but actually, there was a little drop, but that's because it was a very big recovery that happened. Everyone was excited to get out and start traveling again and start doing work again. So that's why our GDP skyrocketed. Okay, then it came down just a little bit. But you see, if the government had actually been this recovery, if this was actually a recession and the government had just put some money in and the economy didn't catch up to it, it would have been a W because it would have gone back down and then back up again. This was a V. This, you see it's going down and it's coming back up. Came down, went up, started going back down again. It's back up, but then it looks like it's going back down again. Sorry, I keep pointing at the PCE, but let's not go there. The GDP is what's important. So nice economy, nice GDP, tanks. Then it starts to recover and starts going down again. And then it starts going over and it's going down again. That's because the economy itself, the free market economy, businesses have not actually jumped on. They have not been jump-started. And until the free market economy comes back, you're going to see this up and down for a very long time. The possibility is that it could actually go into recession again. And because of what the Fed is trying to do with the inflation rate, they're trying to bring it down. They're trying to bring down spending for us. If they bring down spending, you'll probably get a 1/4 of negative GDP. The hope is that you only get 1/4, and then that's when inflation will be down to a reasonable level, and the Fed will start dropping their interest rates. When the Fed starts dropping their interest rates, people are going to start buying things up, houses and stuff like that. The economy, and this is the truth, the economy in a recession is the greatest economy for making money. Why is that? It's because people that can't afford a house will lose their house. And yes, it is sad that they lost their house. But if they can't afford a house, then they lose that house. And if they lose that house, people with money buy that house. So it is the greatest opportunity to buy the house. Plus, if the price was up here at peak and then it tanks, you want to buy a house at the bottom, at the valley, the lowest point. If you can buy a house at the lowest point, you're going to make money as it goes back up. Now, it's not just people that own houses, it's people that are investing in houses. People that invest in houses, a lot of them, they put all their equity in their houses and people can't afford to pay their bills. If they can't afford to pay the bills, that means that person that is renting it, the investor, will lose their investment because they put all the equity in their house. Now, if they had gotten debt free, if they paid off their house, they wouldn't have this issue. They could go months without paying for that house. If someone had to leave the house and they had to get a new tenant in there, then all of a sudden, boom, you would have a few months of leeway and you could be basically calm and ready for the next tenant to come on. But if you had your equity maxed out, meaning you pulled out everything in loans and you owed the bank 100% of the value of the house, and you can't afford that house, sorry, the bank's going to take your house. And who's going to end up with the house? It's the people with the money to pay for it. The cash buyers that will pay for it. And if they can buy it and be debt-free, they're never going to have to worry about another recession or another time when their tenants can't afford to pay the rent. Because yes, they're going to be removing that person and getting a new person in there. But that's going to take time. Anywhere from 3 to 4 months, 3 to 6 months even. And so you want to be able to have a good amount of space in there that you can breathe, which means you can pay your bills up to that point. And again, if you max out the equity you have in your house in loans to pay yourself or to pay for the next house, then you are guilty of this. So those are the consequences. If you follow certain people, certain real estate gurus, and max out your equity and get a whole bunch of quote unquote good debt, then that's exactly what's going to happen. But if you are smart about it, if you're able to pay off your rentals and not have a ton of rentals all with maxed out equities, then you can actually last for a time during a recession, during a time of economic decline, unemployment in the area, until the economy comes back and you get full-time renters in there at a good pay. So this is all things to be looking for. Now here's something that I wanted to show you, something that's beyond just a recession. And this is very important. I'm going to show you this, and then we'll come back to the recessions. There's a really cool, just making a note of this, there's a really cool activity at the end of this chapter where you can actually see all the things that happen and all the recessions that happened in the last 200 to 300 years, 250 years. And you can actually see the patterns in those, like how long they last, how bad it was. So stay tuned for that. When you get the book, you're gonna have to look through this. It's amazing, some of the things. Now you might think it's actually boring, but when you start getting into the numbers, it's quite interesting what you will find. And I'll go over that in just a second after I talk about this. Okay, so recession. What happens during a recession? During a recession, what happens? You're not being paid. You're not going out and buying things. That means businesses are going under, because businesses aren't going under. They're not paying taxes. You're not paying, and so they end up laying off some of their people. Because they're laying off people, those people can't pay taxes. Because those people can't pay taxes and can't get jobs, they can't pay their bills. And what happens? A recession happens, right? Okay, let's look at California. So I had California and New York to choose from. I chose California because it is the largest economy in the country as a single state. It is bigger than any other state and is number 5 on the largest economies in the world. Yeah, that's right. 5. Number 5. So out of all the countries in the world, Russia, Brazil, the UK, it is the 5th largest economy in the world. And what is happening? They are right now in a 70, well, it shows it here at what, 25. But I think the recent numbers is actually, they are now at a $70 million deficit. Oh, sorry, it's over here. Yeah, sorry. This is the California's budget deficit worries are back. So this is actually, I'll show you the article. But this only shows a $1.6 million deficit. Oh, wait a minute. That's the wrong year, right? Okay. So California has had these really bad ones. So look at that. Okay. 1.6. Check this out. The next. Oh, come on. There we go. Oh, 1.6. They would be praying for 1.6. They're now around a $70 million deficit from their budget. That's how much they're going to spend over what they make. States cannot print money. So what are they going to ask for? They're going to ask for bailouts from the federal government. Will the federal government do it? I sure hope not. So the budget problems? Yes. Now this is it. This is operating deficits for the next next 6 years. Next 4 years till 2028. It's going to be negative $30 million. So that's 70 million. And then next year it'll be plus another 30 million. The next year plus another 30 million. Plus the next year another 30 million. How much does that make? It makes $160 million deficit. So they're going to owe $160 million more than they make. That's horrible. That is horrible. Okay, let me show you. I brought some articles I wanted to show you. So this is, again, they're talking about how the economy is slowing down. Inflation rates are heating up. So our inflation rates are increasing. And our GDP is decreasing right now. So let's see what happens there. But here you go. This is what I was talking about with California. California budget deficit is back. Governor Jerry Brown was the former governor before. I actually forgot his name. How did I forget his name? His name is Governor. Wow. And this is 2017. Again, this is just 2017. But this is under the new governor. So that was the former governor in the charts that we were looking at before. This is the new governor. So, yeah, I know. Yeah, Newsom. Thank you. Okay, sorry. So, yeah, Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom is creating a $70 million deficit. Means their budget cannot pay for all the entitlements that they want to do. This was the previous governor, and then he actually created a surplus of money, and now it is facing a deficit of $68 billion. And it goes through a lot of these things. I'm not going to go through everything, but if you want, I'll put this in the notes below, and it'll actually tell you about all the issues. Now, this actually comes from the legislative analysis office. This is the California Legislature nonprofit fiscal and policy advisor, which is actually part of the government. This is the California government reporting on their own deficit. So what happens when a recession happens and there's a deficit? The deficit gets bigger because you're not making as much as you thought you'd be making. Yes, that's right. So a recession comes in and it kicks your butt. And hopefully it kicks into the gear, because again, this deficit is how much is in the budget and against how much they make. So there's $70 million between that. What happens if you don't make as much as you thought you were going to? That's $100 million, or even $200 or $300 million. So what happens when you create a deficit in a state? Here's one thing that you can do. Okay, so if you are in a state where you hear of a negative or a deficit, you need to call your legislators. You need to call your governor. You need to talk to them and find out why in the heck they're running on a deficit, especially in this economy. Again, let's go back. There we go. This is our economy right here. This is our current economy since 2023. It is tanking. This is a misnomer. This is a good quarter, one good quarter, and the rest of them are all going the negatives. So this projection right here is a slower slope. This one is a dramatic slope. We could be seeing another recession within the next few months. Are you ready for that? Do you want to get a job? There's no jobs in recessions. Very little, very rare. Because everyone that's unemployed are people that are experienced. And if people are experienced looking for jobs, they're going to get the jobs before unexperienced people get jobs. So this is why this is so important. This is why it's so important to understand what a recession is, where it comes from, why we actually need to be responsible for ourselves and being self-reliant. So if you can keep from getting into debt, you will keep from thinking you're entitled to someone else bailing you out. And if you can become self-reliant, it doesn't matter what happens in the economy. You are self-reliant. And like I was saying a few episodes ago, some things to invest in when you think the economy might be tanking. Number one, there is no other question. Before there's cryptocurrency, before there's gold, before there's stock market, those mean nothing to you. Number one is always food. Because as prices of food skyrocket, you're still going to have food at the lower rate. Even if food decreases It's because the supply also decreased. Demand, hopefully, decreased as well. If demand increases, which means there's less on the shelf, prices will increase. Now, if demand, for some reason, slows down, and I don't think demand is going to be slowing down for food, then prices will go down. Now, if you think demand is going to come down, okay, great. That means the prices will come down. Then you can buy food afterwards. Supply will hopefully go up. The problem is, demand goes down, those supplying it are not going to be sitting on and letting a whole bunch of their food go bad. They're going to stop producing, which then equalizes, and the demand will start going up, and so will the price. So this is something to know. This has to do with economics. Personal finance is all about economics. You need to understand economics to understand your personal finance. But even if you don't understand economics, just understand this. Just understand this. You are the number one person when it comes to preparedness. You're the number one person when it comes to charity. Because here's the truth. Here is the ultimate truth. We should all be generous. There's no question there. But the ultimate truth is you cannot be generous with someone if you have nothing to give. If you have stuff to give, if you are self-reliant, you then have stuff to give. And other people can benefit from you giving. But unless you have that, unless you have what you need for yourself, you will never be able to take care of anyone else. You can do services for them, but if they need food, you can't give them food. You don't have any. If you have excess food, you can give out food. If you have excess money, you can give out excess money. Now, again, we want you to be charitable. I believe that 10% of your money should go to charity. That's just me. That's my personal opinion. This is not based on fact. This is basically an opinion of myself. And this stems also from the fact that I am religious. And so from religion's standpoint, 10% goes back to God for me. 10% should go to charity of some sort. The more you have, though, the more self-reliant you are, the more that 10% goes up. The more that 10% goes up, the more people get. So I want to make sure that you are ready for the next recession. I want to make sure that you are ready for the rest of your life so that you can be more generous in the future. If you give away everything, in the end, you'll have nothing. If you make more and are generous with the money that you do make, you will be giving more every quarter. Now, the government might think that they're generous, but what money are they giving out? They're giving out yours, mine, those people with money. And yes, we should take care of those that don't have money. But the problem is, the more money that they give out, the more money they're going to have to take from us. The more money they take from us, the less money we have to be charitable. And who's more efficient when it comes to being charitable? Actually, I think we are. Because we know exactly who we're doing, or who we're giving to. Hopefully you're going to be generous and look at the organizations that you're giving to. But we're also not going to give it to our buddies. Yeah, that's right. People in Washington, they love giving out pet projects to their friends. Donations for the government, donations. Money from the government to charitable organizations, to their friends. You, on the other hand, are going to give them out to people that you trust and know that they're basically where your heart is, where you want to send your money. So thank you so much for joining us on this Debt-Free Millionaire podcast, and we will catch you next time. So we've got one more episode this week. I'll probably be releasing it tomorrow, but I'll be on the way to a convention in Orlando. So thanks for joining me today. So there probably will not be an episode on Friday, but stay tuned for more. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.